Inside the dark castle of the Demon Lord, you can find the cold, lifeless bodies of the hero's party members. One man keeps fighting to stay alive while the hero battles the evil lord. The demon grabs the king in his giant hand, ready to crush the last hope for humanity, while the man begs him to stop as he watches the hero slowly get squeezed to death. As he took his final breath, the hero passed his son, Mello, into his own care. The man lets out a scream as the hero falls dead right before his eyes, marking the moment the Demon King crushes humanity and his army takes over the whole continent. Once the fighting stopped, the hero's legendary swordsman friend, Gravel, disappeared completely with no explanation. 10 years later, in a quiet little town, the swordsman is discovered once more inside a dusty junk shop. He is busy hammering a stool to fix it for his neighbor. After the man fixed the stool and got a thank you, he told the story of how the old lady came home that morning and immediately threw it at him. The legendary swordsman, now called Soul, lives a quiet life while mocking his neighbor for hunting for his missing child. He tells us it's Mello's very first day at school and she's almost ready to go home with him. The neighbor says time flew by too quickly and Soul agrees. Later, Soul waits outside the school with patience for Mello. As soon as the bell rang, the little kids ran outside. Just then, Mello pops up with a happy greeting to announce she's arrived. She wraps her arms around Soul while the man softly tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. 3 kids mock her for sticking around the old man, but she boldly declares her love for Soul, leaving the kids completely stunned. They call her weird and then leave her alone. She waves goodbye with such excitement that he asks if she already made friends at school. The girl smiles happily, and the man feels relaxed again. Then they walk home hand in hand, but suddenly a commotion draws their attention as they see a demon bullying a merchant. They won't pay for the goods they received, and demand them for free, claiming they are under the demon army's mercy. The monster snatches the man by his collar, but the man pleads for his life. Soul stands in the crowd, doing his best to stay invisible. Mello leans in as his friend whispers that they must switch paths to stay out of sight. But to his shock, when he looks around, she is gone. Mello catches the monster's eye and gently begs it to let the man go, saying that hurting others is wrong. The demon growls in irritation and turns his angry gaze toward her. Just as he's about to strike her, Soul rockets forward, drops to his knees before the demon and begs for forgiveness. The demon won't forgive them, so he tosses them some gold just to keep them quiet. He stays on his knees while they walk away with his money. He sighs with relief when Mello asks why the demons hurt their friends. At school, her teacher showed them that hurting other people is wrong. Soul says they were just messing with Mr. Demon and turns that scary moment into something good. After helping the merchant pack his things away, the group keeps walking home with Soul holding on to just one hope, that Mello will live a life full of happiness and peace. The following morning, the pair venture into the woods to search for food. Mello lets her childish joy take over as she happily loses herself among the flowers. Soul whispers softly, urging her to find something to eat as well. She finds a mandriora, but Soul snaps at her to find something they can eat, while she keeps ignoring him and wandering off to look at other plants, leaving him to sigh quietly as he realizes she has wasted their money, and now they can't afford a meal. Suddenly, the 2 demons from before show up looking for him, and he is shocked. Pretending to be quiet and harmless, he asks what they want from him. They demand extra money for their safety and gesture toward Mello, leaving Soul stunned as his reckless move backfires since he explains that money is scarce and they've been forced to eat wild plants, so he begs for mercy just as cheerful Mello runs up, recognizing the beasts from before. She twinkles with happiness and asks them to play with her. Soul springs into action to save the girl, but the demon has already grabbed her and crashed her down onto the ground with a violent shove. The blast slams into Soul, throwing him off his feet and freezing him in place. The beast grins at your pain and orders Soul to clean up the dead body. But to their total shock, Mello just sat up easily after the hit. Thinking it's her turn, she stands up and brushes the dust from her knees. The monsters are baffled that she's still breathing when she declares it's finally her turn to play. Mello is ready, her eyes glowing gold as a burst of power wraps around her. The monsters are stunned because those familiar eyes remind them of a legendary hero from 10 years ago who once challenged the Demon King with a shining golden gaze just like the girls have. Knowing she could be the hero's long-lost kin, the beasts rush to tell the Demon King about what just happened. But Soul grumbles that he has no choice and steps in anyway. Mello dashes toward him with a grin, shouting that demons are incredible creatures. He gave her a smile, then tapped the back of her head to put her right to sleep. Just as the monster reaches for his sword, Soul strikes faster and crushes it before it can even move. The other tries to run away and yells, asking who he really is. He won't let their secret out, so he decides to destroy the demon too. He slashes his hand, and the monster screams in agony. Soul apologizes and promises to return his hand. But his sword ends the beast, and then later, Mello wakes up confused about where she is. Soul tells her that she grew too tired from playing and instantly fell asleep. She asks about her demon friends from earlier. Soul told her the beast had to leave early, but thanked her for playing with them. The girl beams with joy at the news, and while walking home she thinks about the wild plants, but Soul tells her not to worry about them. Yahello sits at the table, fidgeting and looking clearly upset. She hardly touched her food, which is very strange for her. Soul sees that she isn't finishing her food like she usually does, so he asks if she's okay, but she reassures him that she's just full and everything is fine. She promised to eat her food later, then suddenly dashed outside with her plate to play, leaving Soul at the table wondering why she was in such a hurry. Outside, Mello slips into the bushes on her knees to feed a creature, which then growls and bites her arm until she winces in pain. Yet she stays calm to promise Gaboo that she will always protect him. She softly tells him the sandwich is safe to eat. After the creature finally stops and starts munching on her sandwich, she notices him eating and quickly realizes she must find a safe hiding spot for Gaboo before Soul finds him. Just as she was hiding, a man stepped out from behind her and stared at the strange creature she was keeping secret. He warns her that Gaboo isn't just a dog but a beast that will grow huge and eat their entire fortune, yet she insists on keeping him and offers to split her food just to feed him. Soul realizes she can't keep the creature for long anyway, so she decides it's best to get rid of it after an intense staring down that leaves the girl trembling and on the verge of tears, which eventually makes Soul give up and let her keep Gaboo, after which Mello and Soul team up to fill a cart with fresh produce. He tells her that if she wants to keep her pet, she has to learn how to earn its food. She eagerly nods and promises to take care of Gabo. Suddenly a cloaked man dashes up and snatches the apples. He gazes at the man and then at the little girl, telling her to give her absolute best no matter what work she chooses, and then he takes off his boots and tosses them at the thief. He reminds Mello that if they don't bring back exactly the right amount of goods, their pay will be cut, so she has to treat every single piece of produce like it's made of gold. Mello nods, and they keep hauling the cart just as the demon army's beasts creep closer, staring hungrily at their prize. They insist on checking their cart because stories say bandits are stealing weapons to fight the Demon King. Mello insists they're just apples, not weapons, so Soul frantically clamps her mouth shut before he humbly explains they're orchard couriers racing to deliver their harvest before sunset. The demons shout that they are being rude and insolent toward the entire demon army. They think the apples are poisoned, so one of them starts mashing them up, one by one, to get rid of the danger. Soul grits his teeth in frustration, knowing they're just getting picked on because the bored beasts are passing the time during their patrol. Feeling annoyed, Mello scolds them for wasting food, which makes the angry beasts charge at her, but just as they're about to strike, Gaboo jumps in and sinks his teeth into one of them. Out of revenge, it grabs Gaboo and crushes the tiny creature against the ground with wild, violent force. Elle freezes in shock as she stares at her pet lying still on the ground, then rushes to pick him up, holding him tightly and weeping. Tears streaming down her face, she screams at the monsters that hurt the creature, calling them cruel and vile. The demons mock her for being soft, so in a fit of anger, she instinctively unlocks her power and vows never to forgive them. When Soul sees her getting upset, he panics and rushes to calm her down. But it's too late now that she has awakened her power and is ready to take revenge on her beloved pet. The two beasts stare in shock at her change, wondering if she has turned into one of them. Elle glances at Gaboo once more, bringing back all their happy times together. She swore to keep him safe, but in the end, she couldn't. Now the demons must face the consequences, but just as she charges up her power to strike them down, Soul steps in to stop her. Her eyes still burning with rage, she commands her master to get moving. He tries to calm her down, but she won't listen, driven by a fierce need to make the two of them pay for killing her pet. Then she unleashes a fast, non-stop flurry of attacks, each one blocked by her soul. He shouts for her to stop and calm down, but she remembers how Gaboo was full of wounds when she first met him. While playing in the forest, she stumbled upon Gaboo hiding in the thick bushes, felt sorry for his helpless situation, and decided to take care of him. But she didn't make it, and now she blames herself for what happened to Gaboo. Ern's tears couldn't stop flowing as she turned her fury toward the two demons. With a burst of power, she tries to finish off the two enemies, but Soul suddenly jumps after her, screaming that Gaboo is still alive, which freezes her fists mid-swing. The Soul says she has to take her pet to the doctor in the next town. Using her speed, she dashes to save his life, which calms her down, and she looks at Gaboo still lying on the ground until she notices him moving slightly and rushes to his side. As soon as the pet lets out a whine, she feels a wave of joy seeing him alive. She looks to her master, who tells her to take the pet to the nearest doctor immediately. Not wanting to waste a single second, she blasts forward with her super speed straight to the nearest town. With a long sigh of relief, the two demons thank their lucky stars for surviving the fight with the kid, though they know they're not out of the woods yet. Soul steps in, stretches out his arms, and points out that when something precious to her gets hurt, she often loses control. She is a truly kind child, far too precious for this harsh world. So he's gotta do the dirty job and take her out for her. One beast hesitates and reaches for his sword, but Soul is faster and aims his own blade at the creature first. He remembers his days with the hero, feeling that his daughter truly had his same spirit. He grips his sword and marches toward his enemies, while in the demon castle, the Dark King sits playing chess. She calls in her special auditor, Claude, to dig into the mystery of the missing soldiers. The loyal servant listens to her order and promises to do it right away. Claude heads to the town of Howl, ordered by the Demon King to look into the missing soldiers. She remembered telling the Demon King that no missing person was ever alone because everyone who vanished had been on duty with a partner. Now she must dig deeper to solve the mystery of those vanishing people. She wandered through the town, noticing that it wasn't the glorious place it used to be. It was once a bustling trading hub that matched the holy capital in wealth and success. Since taxes are collected and sent home without a hitch, she decides to start her search for the missing people at the garrison base in town, where many of them likely are. Suddenly, she hears children being tormented by demons who spit at the loud kids running around. Instead of getting scared, Mello just drives the demons crazy, and her friend has to shout a warning to keep her out of trouble. Claude watches the rough lizardmen fighting and realizes their commander, who reports to Colonel Dawn, seems to let these brawls happen too often. And just then, Soul steps in to save the kids from harm. He forces a smile and begs the demons to let the kids go, promising to teach them a lesson. While all of this is happening, Claude keeps watching everything unfold. Soul keeps begging and even drops to his knees before the demons, while Mello, completely clueless, looks at her friend and asks if they are dangerous. The kid just screams at her helpless, naive friend. Claude can't stand how demons treat humans, especially when soldiers abuse their power and cause chaos in every town. 10 years ago, when we lost to the Demon King, the world flipped upside down and there's no one left to stop it now. The monster says he'll let the man and kids go since they woke him up, but he'll take the man's arm as payment, so he lifts his sword to strike Soul right then, until Claude jumps in and slashes the beast before anyone can blink, leaving both the monster and Soul staring in shock. Soul pulls the children away from the terrifying view and turns to the girl, who insists she can't ignore the clear destruction of the Demon Lord's humble servants. The other lizard men are frozen in shock by her look, but she quickly explains that she is the special auditor from the Demon Lord's army, sent to find out why so many of their kind have gone missing in town. The lizard men can't believe a special auditor is actually human. Feeling their doubts, she pulls her sword and dares them to fight her. Feeling insulted, the demons pull out their weapons and rush toward her. Suddenly, a lizard man officer bursts in to say that headquarters wants us to work with a special auditor. The commander then smiles at her and apologizes for how rude his men were. He then promises to lend his help and resources to see her investigation through. She glares at them with scary eyes, telling them to stay away from the case and promising to call if she ever needs a hand. The commander begins to walk away with his subordinate, but she stops him and throws the severed hand of his own teammate toward him. He calmly grabs her hand and turns to walk away, but he grits his teeth in anger, swearing that he will make her pay for being so arrogant. Mello steps up to her, looking totally amazed by what she just did. Our little buddy Nico hops in and excitedly shouts that she's amazing for kicking the Demon King's soldiers to the curb. Thanks her for saving them. She smiles and says she was just doing her duty, then asks why he didn't run away sooner. If she had been even a second late, he would have been struck down without a thought, and he didn't even flinch as a sword swung toward him. Jewel, feeling nervous, tries to brush off what happened and says he just blacked out. He was so scared that fear took over and he couldn't move. She thinks his acting is weird right as Mello spots Gaboo running straight for her. Now that her pet has healed, she sees a demon beast running loose through the city and instantly draws her sword to keep everyone safe. But to her shock, Soul steps in and stops her attack with ease. They watch in amazement as Mello plays with Gaboo, and while the man explains it's his student's pet to a surprised Claude, she is even more stunned by how effortlessly he stopped her sword, without even blinking. She wonders who that man could be, and later Soul offers Claude a glass of water. Mello kept pushing to bring her to his house, but now he can only offer her a glass of water. She faces no issues with it and says that talking to citizens is just part of her job. She looks around the house and zeroes in on the kids' toys. Then Mello slides a bucket of cookies over to her. She stops for a moment, then can't help but excitedly shout how good the cookies taste. Soul tells us that the neighbor right next door gave it to them. She takes a bite and says the food feels a little dry. Mila and Gaboo think she'll love it, and seeing her happy face, she's ready to hand the cookie back, but Mello insists she wants to share it with her. She decides to break the cookie in half and share it with a huge smile, knowing that eating it together will make it taste even better. Mello happily takes the whole cookie, and even shares a bite with Gaboo. Claude watches her and remembers a moment from her past when her own sister smiled back at her while eating her favorite sandwich. She holds her feelings tight before springing up from her chair. She tells us she has to head off to finish the work she still has left. Anyway, they watch her leave as Mello waves goodbye, unaware that someone is watching them from afar with a smirk. Back in town, Claude starts digging into the mystery of the deserters. She talks to many different people but feels like she isn't moving forward, so she sits on a bench to think about her next move. Suddenly, a child runs toward her and tosses a rock. She warns the boy that what he's doing is dangerous, but just as she speaks, his mother rushes over to beg her for mercy, pleading that he's just a kid who hated the Demon King's army and didn't know any better. Because she wore the demon army's crest, she became an enemy. Since the boy's father was slain by a demon, he naturally hates every soldier in the demon's army. Because she's human, many call her a traitor for serving the Demon King and keep asking her if she feels no shame for betraying her own race. She drops to her knees in front of the boy and says sorry for scaring him. The boy screams for his father to return, but Claude can only watch him with a heart that feels every bit of his pain. While over in the workshop, Sol struggles to fix a broken chair. It looks like it can't be fixed, but he tries anyway. And right then Claude shows up to ask what he's doing. Sol just casually dropped that Mello is currently at school. She's puzzled about his work because the sign outside says junk shop, but Sol explains that he fixes broken things to sell them. She can't believe he's truly a repairman because fixing things doesn't explain how he blocked her sword the other day. She then tells him that the demon's army has caused trouble in their land and asks what he knows about it. But instead of taking her up on it, he flatly refuses. She gets what he did and says he made the smart choice. Suddenly, a strange noise from the backyard makes them rush over and discover a letter bearing the mark of the Demon King's army. Sol snatches up the letter and starts reading just as Claude sprints toward him. When the man opened the letter, he froze in horror to learn that Mello had been snatched by faceless men and was being held hostage at an ancient ruin, demanding that he go alone with nothing but his bare hands. Both are stunned by Mello's capture, while Claude explodes with frustration and destroys Sol's junk shop. She apologizes for the trouble her involvement caused and promises to help him find his child, but Sol reveals that he isn't actually Mello's father, leaving Claude shocked. He says that even though the child isn't his, she is the one precious thing he promised to keep safe. She is completely shocked to see him holding a sword because she didn't think he had ever taken it out of his scabbard. He turns away from her question and gently reminds her that Mello's safety means they must not carry any weapons. She agrees, and they head over to find the child, where they are soon greeted by the commander who had ordered Mello's capture. Injured by his tax cheating and dragging an innocent child into their fight, she spits right at him. He gives her a smug smile and calls her a dog for sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. He can't stand the idea that she earned the king's favor with her sword skills, so he raises his weapon against the kid and mocks Claude for thinking she's anything more than just a human. No matter how hard she tried, she was still not as good as them, so she had to stay humble while the child cried out in fear. The two adults are stunned to realize it wasn't Mello, but her friend Nico all along. They stare at each other in confusion, suddenly understanding that demons can't tell human kids apart any more than humans can spot one demon from another. Even though she asks him to give up the child so they can talk after leaving her weapon behind, he still finds the situation too dangerous for a human kid. But the commander just smirks and says he'll give her the kid only when she's dead, so the other lizard men rush toward her. She pushes Sol to run and find Mello while she takes on the enemies. Pure determination, he leaps toward the beast, nimbly weaving out of the way of its vicious strikes. She fights back and lands some good hits, but it still isn't enough to take them down. She stayed strong and didn't move an inch even after taking all their attacks. And with phase turns the beast against each other, leaving the commander shouting at his useless fools for failing to beat a single human. He threatens Mello and tries to use the little boy to scare her, but to his shock, Sol steps in to save the kid without anyone noticing. Claude is just as stunned as the commander, wondering if he has already left to find Mello. He then hurls a sword her way and urges her to finish it fast. The commander, furious with rage, storms off his throne and charges straight at Claude. As she falls, a dead soldier's hand grabs her leg, causing her to stumble. Because of this, she can barely block the attack, so the commander laughs at her struggle, mocks her for never matching his raw power, and orders her to die. Claude stands firm against the assault until Sol rushes in to save her, knocking out the monster with a single powerful blow. She is shocked that he hit the beast from far away, and now that their leader is down, the lizard men try to run, but she stops them all and ends their fight. She's about to challenge him about his power, but he says they're running late for the pickup. As they rush, Claude apologizes once more for dragging them into her trouble and the demon army. Sol insists it wasn't her fault and that the only thing that matters is the kid is safe. Claude still carries the weight of his thoughts, so he tries to cheer her up by saying it was a huge relief to finally get the goons off his back. But then his sharp stare gives away the truth. He knows she is part of the demon army. She remembers the Demon King's words and her mission to find the missing demons. Just as she starts to speak, he throws a hammer right at her. He speaks with a serious tone to tell her that she must fix the lumber shed she destroyed earlier. Once she mends it, they'll call it square and be on their way. They finally reach the town, where both Mello and the boy's mother are waiting for them. The kid's eyes sparkle with joy as she watches her master carry her sleeping friend, and she quickly apologizes for being late. Nico's mother hugs him so tightly, feeling so relieved to see her child safe. She asks where they found the boy. Sol reveals that some demon squadrons started fighting each other because they fought over stolen tax money. He points to Claude and introduces her as the auditor who saved him, and as things calm down, she notices he wants her to tell headquarters about what happened. She wonders who he truly is, but as a fellow swordsman, she knows she must find out his real identity. Sol speeds along while carrying Mello on his back. They're running late for school, so he scolds the girl for forgetting to check the clock in the morning. As she calmly munches on her breakfast, she whispers that school ends right after lunch. Frustrated, he snaps at her that she should have warned him sooner, because he can only stay open for 4 hours before losing all his money again. Her face shines with joy as she spots Claude waiting right there for them. As the woman welcomes them, Sol can't help but wonder why the auditor has returned, especially since they settled their score yesterday and she should no longer need anything from him, leading him to suspect this might be a trick by the demon's army. He rushes past her, but she seizes his hand to hold him back. Suddenly, she looks at him with a flustered expression and begs him to let her stay in town. Sol is lost in confusion, while Mello can't stop smiling because she's coming over to their house. She says that after the commander was hurt, she got in trouble along with the other officers. Because of this, she has nowhere to stay since she was ordered to remain as an overseer until a new commander arrives, yet as an auditor, she must keep her distance from the regular soldiers. With no other place to turn, staying with them seems like the best option, but he thinks it's too much trouble and suggests she move to the military camp instead. She flat out says no because she hates the cold and being shivering would ruin her mission. Now that it's no longer his trouble, he strides right past her, and in a desperate plea, she offers to pay him a fortune just to let her stay. He stops cold and thinks about her offer, knowing that money is worth more to him than the trouble it would cause. And on top of that, her face twists into a look of pure desperation. Nell begs him to let the woman stay, so he sighs in agreement but warns her she can only take one corner of his home, leaving her stunned that he'd actually say yes. He says his goodbyes to her first because he has to take Mello to school. She must stay close to him because even though she serves as an auditor in the demon's army, this mission is entirely for her own survival. Later, in his workshop, he told her to sleep in the back room while he worked there all day. He then asks who the new commander will be for their area. She insists she hasn't met the person yet, but she heard they hold a very high rank. It watches quietly, wondering how deep his fear of the demon army really goes. Sol apologizes for asking too much, but he sees she only brought a wooden sword, which tells him she's not trying to hurt them. She's surprised he caught on so fast, then offers to train with him and pulls out her wooden sword. As an auditor, she has to uncover the secret to his strength because her curiosity is killing her, and she wants to see just how far her skills can go against him. He scratches his head and nods in agreement to her idea. The moment she hears the words, she jumps at the chance, only for Sol to warn her that if he wins, she'll have to do whatever he asks, but seeing her determined look, she smiles and agrees to his terms. She takes the deal, declaring that a swordsman never goes back on their word. Suddenly, Gabu crawls out from his hiding spot right when the two warriors lock eyes and leap at each other, their weapons clashing in midair. Claude shakes off her hesitation and begins to strike her opponent over and over in quick succession, but Sol easily dodges every attack and hits her with his wooden sword. She blocks the hit, but then he storms forward and bombards her with a wave of attacks. Every hit feels like getting struck by a hammer, so she has to step back for a moment. She steps back to keep him from getting too close and taking advantage of her. She then smirks and asks if he is holding back against her. Tells her he's just practicing with her, so there's no reason to get serious. She charges at him, only to be shocked when he disappears, then suddenly finds him standing behind her with his weapon aimed at her neck. With that, she gives up, frustrated that she can't even lift her sword to fight him. He lets out a scary grin, and now they have to talk about their deal. Later, Claude walks through town with Gabu, while townspeople stare in shock, knowing she now wears the demon's mark. She remembered that All Soul only asked her to pick up Mello from school and take Gabu for a walk. She notices from their fight that he is way better than he lets on. His strength isn't something you can just train into yourself. He knows the truth, but she still wonders exactly where he learned his skills. She finally picks up Mello from school and feels bad about having to do it, but Mello just says she's really glad to see her. With a happy face, she says she loves walking home with her master, but with Claude, she feels like she suddenly found a mother. Flustered, the auditor looks away and explains that she can't call Sol Papa because he isn't her father, but rather just the guardian there to keep her safe and happy. Claude suddenly remembers what Sol told her. He isn't the child's father. She wonders what happened to Mello's parents and how they are connected to Sol. As the days pass, she can't stop wondering who the man really is. Then she spots him quietly watching them while he carries logs for a fire. He strides quickly to close the gap, snatches her by the collar, and gets angry because she is trying to learn their secrets. He tells her to stop asking so many questions or he'll make her leave. He tells Mello to gather more firewood, but she flat out refuses. He repeats his order, telling her he counts on her, then turns back to the house and wonders if what he's doing is right. He flashes back to a memory of the past, remembering Mello's mother, Rena. 10 years ago, while Gravel Soul was just the hero's loyal sidekick, he actually had a family. Rina, the mage, sat by the window with her baby bump showing for all to see. Dion, the hero, was so thrilled about his baby. He felt it was a miracle to receive such a precious blessing and asked his friend Gravel what he thought, and young Soul agreed but added that it took a lot of courage to make a baby in their situation. Though Rina sulked and apologized for the trouble she caused, Dion gently told her he had been hoping for a baby for a long time. Even though his teammates told him it didn't matter since he was married anyway, they still called him reckless for leaving his pregnant wife right when they were about to win the battle against the demon army. Emma the archer recalled how Dion proposed to Rina while covered in the Demon King's general's blood, much to Kato the priest's delight at officiating and witnessing the wedding. He let out a sigh and scolded his cheerful crew for their optimism in the midst of a long, brutal war. They kept their spirits high with joy over the wedding and baby, even though they were in the middle of a dangerous trip. He didn't feel a scrap of regret when he reminded everyone that just getting this far was enough. After finally reaching her breaking point, Rina screamed at him, furious that he had been so spiteful since the very first day they met. Soul smirked and noted that the wealthy girl had finally revealed her true nature, but when she spat at him in anger for calling her that and refused to be spoken to by his childhood friend, the insult hung heavy in the air. She demanded they finish everything and let him say whatever he needed to say. More they kept trading bitter words until neither would back down, and Dion tried to put out the fire by telling his wife that if Soul had never gone with him, they might never have met, since he would have stayed in their village his whole life. Without Rina, they'd lack their shining mage and their future wife. Without both of them, his life felt empty, so he desperately wanted them to get along since they meant everything to him. They muttered apologies to one another, and the three warriors chuckled at the whole thing. After Emma asked about the baby's name, Rina revealed they wanted to call their daughter Mellow, leaving Soul shocked while Emma called it cute, and Rina added that Dion had chosen the name. Soul nudged Dion for giving their turtle's childhood name to their child, remembering when they were kids, and chose the turtle, which Soul named Mellow, because turtles live long lives and the name meant million. He sighed and shook his head, telling his eccentric best friend not to name their child after a turtle, even though it was supposed to bring good luck. Dion rested his arm on his shoulder and whispered that he'd always dreamed of making him the baby's godfather. To him, Soul was family and his best friend, so knowing Soul would be there for his baby made him feel safe and calm. He grinned at him and whispered that he must never tell Rina Mellow's name or she would kill him. But he truly thought it was a wonderful name, and in those bright moments, they held on to the dream that they could live a normal, happy life, filled with the gifts of friendship and family. But they didn't know yet that everything would soon fall apart. Soul stood alone on the shore the night before the final fight, pushing his body to the limit while the waves told him exactly how deep his despair went. He takes a deep breath and quiet his mind before the big tomorrow comes. A few hours ago at home, the swordsman heard Dion calling from outside to say he'd be gone for a long time this time. By the time he returns, their child might already be born. Sitting quietly with Rina, he lets his mind wander over that possibility. She worries when she sees his face, but he promises to do his best for his child and everyone else. Before, he didn't truly know what it meant to be a hero. Now it was crystal clear what this role meant and what I had to do. Soul listened to this heartfelt and hopeful chat. Now he grips his sword tight to keep training, still not seeing why a kid meant so much to his friends. As morning broke, a crowd of people gathered at the village entrance. As the heroes and villagers exchanged warm goodbyes, Rina noticed Soul standing far away, looking calm and quiet. When she calls out to him, he sighs and wonders if she's about to give him another lecture. She asks him to take care of Dion, but he insists the hero is the kind of person who always handles things by himself. This time she holds on tight and begs the swordsman like she never has before. Seeing the desperation in her eyes, he promises to do it, noting that he's known his friend longer than she ever has. She wished she could have stayed with them until the very end, knowing her friends would let her follow at her own pace, and when the baby is born, his surprisingly sweet words make her cry so she can finally say goodbye to her friends on their last big adventure. Emma and Kato pray their baby will be born healthy and can't wait to meet it, while the swordsman walks quietly behind them. Dion asks if he feels lonely now that he's lost his only opponent, Rina. Even though he didn't object, the expectant father looked far too good to be leaving. He doesn't deny it, promising his child a peaceful world once he returns, because that hopeful dream of a monster-free family picnic by the river is exactly what he is looking forward to. Soul will definitely join the picnic without even needing to be asked. His family too, so even though the swordsman watches with doubt, a small smile tugs at his lips as Dion skips forward with pure joy. He chases his dreams all the way to the moment he decides to let go. 42 days later, they stood before the Demon King's throne room, with Soul gasping for air from sheer exhaustion. But on the other side of the scene, Emma and Kato were already lying dead on the ground. He stood before the Demon King, staring at him and wondering what was going on. As the enemy grinned, Dion shouted from behind to stay focused, and together they charged in as humanity's last hope, only to find their entire effort was mere child's play against the Demon King's overwhelming power. A single finger flicks the soul right out, sending it crashing around like a loose toy. Lying half dead, he watches a broken sword hit the floor and sees his best friend being held by a demon. Dion was lifted up, completely helpless with no way to stop it. Then the swordsman is told to watch closely as their final chance of hope is crushed. In this moment, their shared memories flood back to them, reminding them that from naming turtles to Rina's plea for him to care for her husband, they always loved each other above all. Suddenly, everything falls apart. Just before Dion's body is crushed in front of his best friend, he flashes one last smile to the man who is about to witness the horror. The Demon King's castle rang out with the wails of agony. Dion had to watch helplessly as his poor friend's body hit the ground, and his vision began to blur. Only 12 minutes into the fight with the evil lord, the hero had already fallen. As humanity's greatest enemy grinned, Soul gritted his teeth and cursed him. Tears of grief and rage welled in his eyes as a fresh wave of power erupted from him, surging through the hero's shattered blade and binding it together with his raw fury. The Lord is curious about this sudden change, especially when the swordsman vanishes from view. He rushed forward with a speed none of them had shown before. The attack meant to end him was stopped dead by the demon's sudden rise of a magical wall. Soul kept talking while his blade tore through the cloth on his arm with pure raw power. But sadly, that wasn't enough, and he gets sent right back easily. He isn't finished. Firing a magic blast to shield himself, he bounces off the fall and blasts straight through the explosion's smoke. With one final push, he lands on the Demon Lord's body, leaving both of them shocked by the sudden wild strength he has unleashed. Yet the human had no intention of listening to her words, being fully set on vanquishing her once and for all. He dumps every ounce of energy into this final blow, ignoring what happens after, and the shot connects. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light shatters the Demon King's body, and it looks like humans have finally won. Yet Soul was on the ground again, watching the fallen hero's sword clatter down. He looks at every enemy he ever defeated and holds back tears, knowing the battle has finally ended. But then he suddenly hears the Lord's voice praising him for trying his hardest. The dark presence took his hand, whispering words of praise about how a boy like him could wield the holy sword. They told him he was too reckless and urged him to be smarter next time. All he could do was turn his head to face the enemy who was still alive. He's a little baby who has just figured out how to stand up and is waiting for his parents to cheer for him. She'll be as tough as needed to make him grow much stronger. As the weight of his attacker finally lifts, he spins around to find the Demon King standing whole again, his eyes locked on him. Confused about how she did it, she lifted her arm over his head, and he finally saw there was no way to win as his vision faded to black and her voice echoed in his mind, telling him to grow stronger for when they meet again. Soul's eyes flew open and his whole body snapped upright. And instead of the Demon King's dark castle, he found himself alive in a lush green land after a brutal fight. Peering around and confused about his location, he hears someone nearby urging him to escape before the demons, who are currently marching on the capital, arrive. With faces full of terror and despair, they cry out that the country has already lost. Their cruel words struck deep in Soul's heart as he realized the enemies had reached the capital, shattering the place where Rina was supposed to be safe. So he sprinted until he found the village already burning and filled with the dead. But as he looked around in panic at the survivors crying in the rain, he heard the city had fallen, and the people were blaming the heroes for losing so easily, even after giving them hope. So while he rushed through the rubble and heard their insults, he suddenly heard someone call his name and found Rina still alive holding baby Mello in her arms, and he ran to her with great relief to see her safe and carrying her child. Rina gives Soul a warm hug for being back. He asks what has happened and why she is there while the Demon Lord's army, aiming for the hero's kin, attacks the village. It's just that the village had been utterly destroyed. The swordsman slammed his hand hard against the wall in rage. It feels like all their hard work has vanished in an instant, so when she sees his rage, she quickly apologizes, admitting she only tried to save her child. Even though she was one of them, she did nothing when it counted, and feeling just as useless, he cursed himself. Dion's final smile still burned in his mind, and he hated that he was the only one who survived. Rina asks what became of her dear husband. With silence and a tremble of anger, she understands as tears run down her face, empathizing with how he carries the heavy burden of surviving alone. Dion always thought of him as family, so despite admitting it's a bit selfish, she asks him to look after Mello. He freezes at the request, suddenly crushed by the weight of the truth. Just as they were about to share their special moment, a voice from the doorway broke the silence, someone holding up Rina's poster. Turning around, they spot a pair of demons who have just confirmed that the hero's baby has been born. It'd be a real hassle if they walk away without fixing this mess. Soul gears up for the fight, knowing this time he's going to protect his family for sure. While one demon stays behind to watch over them, the other rushes off to tell the Demon Lord everything he just heard. A small explosion catches the demon leaving and halts him instantly. Rina stood up and told the swordsman to grab Mello and leave. He promises to fight the demons and tells her to stay safe, but he finally notices the deadly wound on her body and sees how pale her face is as she pleads for him to leave. Soul's face fell when he saw it was already too late and she wouldn't have much time left. Because he's the only one who knows about the child, she asks him to keep her son safe. The young man obeys and cradles the sleeping baby, fighting back tears and curses, while the mother gives one last glance to her family before stepping in front of the demons to protect them. Unfo charged forward to stop her targets from escaping, but she wasn't about to let him get close, so she jumped right over the demon and blew him up. Tul didn't want to, but his feet moved as fast as they could. And now that the demon army is gone, Rina only wants her child to live happily, so she asks him to create a world where Mello can smile every day. The mage offers a tearful smile as he binds the demon in chains of light. She's ready to do anything to keep them from telling the Demon King. But then the second one suddenly stuck his spear right through her chest. He laughed, but the same chains slammed onto him before he could stop them. Rina was going to do whatever it took to keep the hero's child from being found. Her body flashed with violent light as she exploded, taking the demons down with her self-destruct spell, leaving Sol helpless and ending the life of Rina, the hero's wife and mage. A while later, the swordsman sat among the broken remains of the city. A fly demon spots him while he holds the baby. It zooms off to tell the demon lord, but a blast of Sol's magic sends it crashing down from the sky. Suddenly, he spots a lizard on the ground and picks it up. For a split second, he thinks back to the Demon King, blinks, and there's just the lizard's tail left in his hand on the ground. Just like the lizard, the enemy survived this way, and he couldn't help but laugh at how stubbornly they keep coming back. As he feels Mello whine and squirm, he gently adjusts her arms to keep her from crying. Sadly, both mom and dad were gone. So the child's tiny hand grabs his finger, and the sad young man cries in the rain. Dion's final words were a plea for him to look after his daughter. Rina did it too, and both of them did it with a smile on their faces. Now he has no choice but to do exactly what they tell him. Her soul screamed, promising to guard Mello and hide her from the Demon King and his army. When Dion found his reason for heroism in his child, Sol finally understood that this is why he was able to survive all alone. With gentle hugs and tender touches, he promises to teach the little one the skills for a happy life. On that day, he chose to spend the rest of his tough life making sure the baby had a good future. Just like a lizard that drops its tail to stay alive, he lets go of being a warrior to survive. In the city's demon office, Officer Sasa reviewed the report about Claude, which detailed her taking charge of the former commander and the soldiers in the area. In the end, her original mission to find the missing soldiers has come to nothing. She's been asked if this is really what happened. As the picture of her soul flickers in her mind, she nods in agreement and finally says sorry. From then on, Colonel Balam takes over the power and control. Her fate is sealed in the end, but right now the auditor is officially brought before the colonel to hear what he has to say. Her heart raced with worry as she looked up, only to be surprised when he snapped his fingers, turning on the lights to reveal the bright room. The new commander laughed, hoping to loosen the stiff air that had settled over everyone. His calm attitude catches Claude off guard, especially since he already knows she is a well-respected officer at headquarters. He read her report and knows the former commander stole money just to have fun. She was right to act, and the auditor was left speechless once more. Sasa pushes for a punishment, but Balloom dislikes that kind of show and just wants to get along. Besides, he likes humans and dreams of a world where humans and demons live in peace, though what he says can't always be trusted. Right then, he shouts out for a guy named Vine. Suddenly, a loud voice calls out from outside, and a young demon girl leaps across the room to answer him. She acts like a good girl, calling out and answering the moment she is summoned. Balam presents her as his daughter who has never seen the world outside, so he sends her to learn and help the very people he came to find. Claude asks what the hero means, and learns that a similar old case was once solved by a brave hero. More than a decade ago, soldiers started disappearing into thin air. He thinks that just like heroes used to start as normal people, a fresh one has shown up. She couldn't believe her eyes when he told her that Vine had already smelled something strange about them the moment they walked into the city, and the girl admitted it was true because she could sense that special hero scent. The air is thick with a stinky odor that she absolutely despises. Her father wraps his arms around her and praises her heart for feeling this way toward the race that once killed their own people. If humans and demons are to live in peace, heroes have no place to be. That perfect idea was being quietly planted deep inside the child's mind. When Vine sees Claude watching her, she smiles proudly and challenges him, saying she can find the heroes faster than he can. She arrives at work and rushes out before anyone even gives her an order. Her father thinks her enthusiasm is cute, but Balan warns the official that she still has work left to do on her case. Curious to know more about the city, he steps forward and says he can't wait to work with them. Amy Spectre agrees, wondering if a hero might show up and thinking about Sol. In the heart of town, the crowd screams in shock as they spot Vine darting and leaping through the streets. It felt like she could see and smell the light right beside her. Eventually, she finds the awful smell near the edge of the woods. She jumped in to find the hero, only to be shocked when she saw Gaboo barking at her, while Mello was pinned down, and though the child and demon both looked confused, Vine suddenly attacked Mello because she thought she was the hero, but then the bad smell was gone. She turned her head this way and that, searching for the trace that had vanished into thin air. But every little wiggle and wiggle of the toys just made the little girl below giggle with laughter from being tickled. The demon misunderstood, tells her to stop laughing, but she doesn't listen. Seeing she doesn't get it, Mello flips them over and pins her down this time. Vine bursts into giggles, shoves the happy kid away, calls him weird, and tries to act like a big shot. But the girl just sees this as a chance to say hello and get to know each other. Then she sniffed the air again, wondering why the strong smell had vanished. Her dad praised her for being able to sniff out the bad heroes. The young demon was urged to use his special gift to help his own kind. She wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug and promised to follow his orders. But then, the scent of a warm cookie suddenly breaks through and fills her nose. Em lifted the biscuit right to the demon's nose and, seeing her look of puzzlement, explained that she and Gabu were just having a snack fight. Though there aren't many treats, she insists on sharing them, and even though Vine is confused at first, he can't stop her from taking a bite. Bo strolled about shouting loudly to get the child and her pet's attention. It was a risky time to be wandering around, especially with the new commander arriving that day. He hears a familiar troublemaking voice close by and finds the small group hiding in the nearby shrub. Mello greets him with a bright smile, but he's shocked to see an unfamiliar face. And while the confused Vine calls him teacher, he is stunned by the demon standing so close until he realizes the truth. The girl before him is a chimera. She suddenly sprang up, shot straight into the sky, and flew off home without saying another word. Mello watched with wide eyes and cheered as her new friend waved, smiling and promising to play together again soon. While the girl cheered happily, Sol kept his eyes sharp and wary of this new stranger, unable to believe she thought they were friends. After all, he still trembles at the memory of that awful fight with Chimeas from a decade ago. After nearly 2 years on their quest, the heroes fought a terrifying chimera at its three-headed fortress, where stitched-up children with mindless movements attacked them with monstrous strength. As the pace grew too fast to handle, they had to count on each other to watch their backs. But there was no time for thanks, so while the fight raged on, Sol turned to the priest and asked if he could take care of the wounded. Capoto did everything he could with his powers, but even holy magic couldn't undo the damage once it was done. As Dion ground his teeth in rage, a voice warned that human magic couldn't stop such power, and then they looked up to see the true villain staring down at them from the sky. Irina angrily leapt forward and fired a blazing serpent spell at the man sitting nearby, but the demon just smiled and waved a hand to cancel the magic before it could reach him. It was a terrible creature who took human children to turn them into mindless chimera soldiers. With tears streaming down her face, she asks how he could ever do something so terrible. Dumbo grinned, looking down at the pitiful humans. He's pouring strength into them just because he loves them so much. Calling him cruel is a grave insult, especially since he gave them power while they try to kill the children, making them the true murderers in this story. Even more chimeas marched out of the castle. As soon as he saw them, rage flooded Sol's body and he charged straight at the awful demon. 10 years later, he watches the vine sail away and discovers that the new commander is a familiar foe from his past. Back in the demon tower, Balloon welcomed his daughter and asked if she had found anything. Instead of speaking, she simply drops into his arms, exhausted from the chaotic day, and he tells her to relax and take her time. After 10 years of building a peaceful world, where humans and demons live together, she becomes the hero who makes that dream come true as his greatest masterpiece. Yet Sol still hasn't faced anything as terrifying as the fight against the Chimeas, who surrounded them by dismembered and mindless human children that forced the heroes to kill every single one just to survive. Dion was suddenly there behind him, swinging his blade. The demon isn't scared but utterly amazed by what he sees, dodging every strike with a grin while loudly praising the so-called hero's strength. It was impressive. But then Sol popped right in behind him, holding even more untapped power. They were still young with lots of room to grow. Gazing straight into the swordsman's eyes, he promises that he can't wait to see them again. Right now, that swordsman sat safely in his home, haunted by the terrible fight with the Chimera and determined to keep that young one far away from Mello, no matter what. Just then, the child rushed inside and got yelled at right away for wandering off on her own. His plans fall apart instantly when Vine sneaks up behind her and barges right into his house. She explains they bumped into each other while walking Gabu. For the very first time, they finally get to meet properly. He watched in silence as the new girl turned down Mello's cookies, only to be forced to eat them anyway. She spat out the gross taste and gagged. Even though they reacted differently, Sol saw that this chimera was fully awake, unlike the mindless ones they'd fought before. Got enough spunk to call him out for just staring at her. They're told to head up the stairs and stay inside if they want to play. Even though they were terrified that anyone might spot them with demons, Claude showed up right then. Her eyes lock onto the Chimus, and they stand frozen in confusion for a few heartbeats. She looks at him and wonders if the auditor is just one of her dad's henchmen. After hearing from Mello, she climbs the tight stairs to the second floor to start playing. Before she could move, the auditor found herself pushed hard against the wall. She was a talented fighter, yet Sol's scary look stopped her from running as he accused her of knowing a secret. For some reason she turned red as she asked him what he meant. It turns out the girl is Colonel Balin's daughter, which proves his fears and suspicions were right all along. He says he doesn't know the commander, but guesses that having a daughter like her must be a real headache, which makes Claude suddenly remember how Vine sensed something was wrong the moment they entered the city. So she turns to the man and asks him a question of her own. The air crackled with tension as she bluntly asked if he knew the hero, but the auditor held his breath and, acting like a seasoned pro, pretended to be confused while even acting like she was strange for asking, then insisted that bringing up such things was simply too dangerous. Then incredible ideas, he suddenly froze when the silence became too quiet, making her think they were being good while he knew that silence for kids usually means they are up to something. Sol hurried up to the attic, where he found an empty room and a letter by the open window explaining that the two of them had gone out to explore. So angry and scared, the grown-up threw himself out the window to find them, leaving the soldier back inside. It forced him to run so hard that people in the city couldn't see their true dangerous selves, and right in the middle of town a crowd gathered while men glared with hate at the two young ones. As the two friends soared over the city with Mello screaming with joy and holding on tight to Vine's strong legs, the chimera pretended to be cool and brave even though carrying her was a real struggle. She laughs in the child's face because he can't fly like he dreams of doing, while she manages to fly just fine. Although lacking this simple skill is a huge hassle, Mello insists they can at least take in the whole city together, and even though that strange link jolts Vine's mind, the moment ends when a grumpy human insists on stopping for lunch, which the demon's crumbling stomach happily agrees to. The streets came alive with food stalls serving delicious meals and snacks. Children were surrounded by skewers, sweets, and endless delicious choices. Vine is seeing this world for the very first time, and she can't stop smiling in wonder as they walk. Just then, someone spots them and shouts to draw attention, claiming that a demon army member is bothering them even on market day. With everyone glaring and growling, the chimera looked right back and asked if they had a problem with her. Mel sees someone and cuts the talk short. She pointed to a classmate nearby, but the boy just glared back at her with pure annoyance. The little girl rushed over to her friend, excited to ask if they wanted to play and eat, but the boy suddenly turned on her, furious that she was hanging out with a demon, and pointing angrily at the chimera while shouting his question again. While Mello hid in fear of his own words, he casually shared how he and his friend had only met yesterday, a wildly impossible story for anyone to believe. The girl was shocked at first, but then she smiled and confirmed that Vine was truly kind, even though befriending his enemies was such a terrible idea, and she only arrived here just a few days ago. She was slammed onto the ground to keep her from getting any closer. But this happens right in front of the girl's new friend, who is now furious and demanding to know why he did it. A few witnesses are worried about calling the army, but they know the soldiers will side with the demon because the army has caused them so much pain. Even if Vine is a demon, she's still just a kid who can be killed. So Mello steps in to stop the fight and says no one will fight. As she got closer, the hero's strength slowly drained out of her small body. Vine catches a whiff of the hero's scent for just a heartbeat. She flexed her claws while he wondered if the one she was hunting was among them, not realizing it was actually her friend. Right as the cleaver-wielding men charged in, a stern voice cut through the air and froze them all in their tracks. Rode a giant demon from the distance, asking the townsfolk if something was wrong, but since they knew they couldn't win, they quickly went quiet and said nothing, while Vine whipped her head around, still searching for the enemy. When told it's best to head back to headquarters and realizing she can no longer smell the hero, the wise chimera hops onto the officer's ride and leaves her small friend behind. Mello stood frozen, his eyes locked on her as if he desperately wanted to hold her back from leaving. She met his look for a moment, then turned away to walk off with her people, leaving him standing there alone. Just then, Sol burst in, completely worn out from searching for her everywhere. Finally, she found safety in his arms, and later Vine lay in the middle of her room, staring up at the ceiling while her mind replayed the day's events. Back then, she could definitely smell the stench of a hero. Suddenly, a knock at the door breaks her thoughts, just as she starts to imagine something terrible. Balan stopped by to see how she was doing, and asked if the locals were giving the young one a hard time. They talk about her for a while, and he feels bad that they can't see how wonderful she is. For a moment, there is no sound at all until the commander finally speaks about his daughter's brand new friend, her very first one. He calls out Mello's name with a sharp, mean grin and says he can't wait to say hi to the kid. Nell has been heartbroken ever since that day, and as she walked beside Sol, with a heavy step and bowed head, he remembered pressing Claude for answers about Vine, only to realize there was nothing more she could reveal. While asking why she was coming to the human towns, he was told she could feel special powers, so he thought about this news for a long time. As he walks behind his sad child, he suddenly tells her to stop playing with Vine right then and there. The girl asks right away why he'd say that, since her friend hasn't done anything wrong, but worries that even if she's not bad, her position could still hurt her. Standing above Mello, he reminds her that she's just a human and a child. He crouches to whisper that she belongs with her human parents, but she snaps back that she's never met them. He was hit hard by her words, especially when she said Vine mattered more than strangers. She turned away, walked off alone, and told the teacher she hated them for never trying to understand. Sol can do nothing but scratch his head and sigh, knowing there's no other way. It hit him again just how hard it is to raise a kid. Mello ran away, confused and hurt, wondering why people were being so mean just because they weren't like him. Why do they try to stop her from playing with her friend just because she's different? She arrives at school with her mind full of thoughts and then hears a mom wondering why her son is such a picky eater. He swears he hates fish, yet he has never even tasted a bite. If he keeps acting like this, he'll never get to taste anything truly delicious. Mello's chat sparks a brilliant idea, and though it takes a moment to put the pieces together, she acts on it instantly. With a bright smile on her face, she took off running from the school just like that. She decided that everyone was acting like a picky eater without actually knowing anything about Vine. To fix that trouble, she boldly heads to the demon's lair to ask her friend to join the group fun. As the child stood proudly at the door, the guards just stared at her like she was crazy before she took a deep breath and screamed for Vine to come out and play. Claude steps forward, covering her mouth in shock and asking why she was even there. The girl is shocked to see her there, but before she can speak, the auditor grabs her and rushes her away from anyone who might cause trouble. She tugs Mello deeper into the woods and warns him that it's too dangerous for a human kid to walk alone. When asked about Soul, the little one recalls his serious command and tells him she no longer cares about him. After all, she traveled all this way just to play with her friend she misses. Claude softly shows how much Soul cares for her, even as Soul complains about stopping their game with Vine just then, and Balam steps in to join their chat, leaving everyone feeling a bit awkward as they all look at him. As the auditor collapses in shock, Mello simply asks who he is, and he replies that he is her Vine's father, confirming the little girl is her daughter's friend, then thanks her for her kindness and asks her to tell him what happened. As she begins to reply, Claude, who already senses the probing, tries to stop her, but he's told to go back to his work while they speak. His voice shifts from a soft whisper to a firm command, ordering them to stay and talk while his face lights up as she finally accepts she has no other option. After he finally sends the auditor away, Balloom explains that he knows someone has been helping Vine handle the tough times in town. He questions why she chose to be friends with the young one. Mello stares hard at the problem, yet he can't believe they grew so close just because of a cookie. The little girl then tells the tale of their snack fight until the moment adults surrounded them. She wrapped up by saying it was fun, but sadly folks keep calling her names just because she's a Vine demon. She doesn't understand him, and while he just wants everyone to get along, her strange words make him wonder if her ignorance is actually a clever trick that could get the whole city into trouble. Mello doesn't know how they do it and is worried about what she can do to change their minds. With a sly grin, Balloom suggests she turn into a chimera just like Vine, and as satisfaction bloomed on his face, Mello asks if she'd be able to soar through the sky like him. Balloom instantly agrees, even going so far as to say his daughter wouldn't feel alone if she had a friend like her. The little girl's eyes open wide with wonder and care as he thinks openly about how his daughter feels. He keeps teasing the little girl into saying yes, forcing her to remember both the joyful moments they shared and the cruel things that happened just because she was different. More than her school, the only real friend she has found is Vine, and they feel like one and the same kind of person. If there was a way to make her happy, Mello would do anything to make it happen. The air around them shimmered and danced as Balan called her a sweet child. But while that happened, Claude sprinted through town as fast as she could, remembering how the Colonel was famous for creating chimera monsters and knowing she had to reach Soul before he could do anything else. He was stunned that she had returned so early, but the officer's urgent news that the commander had taken Mello to headquarters hit him like a truck, forcing him to quickly rush toward the child without wasting a single second. Only 2 demons were standing guard, and there was no human kid around. Given that she isn't at school either, she must have been taken by Balam. Claude apologizes for not stopping the attack even though he was there, but now they can't waste time because the Colonel might already be changing her body, and while the auditor wonders if she can use her authority, her hands are tied since the Colonel, once a military officer, was once above all demons and ranks far higher than her. Knowing he had no other option, Soul finally forced himself to make a decision. She gasps when she sees a fierce new shine in his eyes. The only way forward is to slip inside quietly and pull the child away from whoever is holding them. Claude pleads for a chance to help him, convinced that she shares some of the blame for what went wrong. He nods in approval, she shows him the base's layout, and then he asks for another favor. High above, a demon guard in the tower yawns and lazily patrols, completely unaware that he is the first to fall as Soul breaks in. Now that the human has stepped into the enemy's hulls, they know Balam, as Claude said, lives like a king in just a few rooms. There's a secret doorway to his private rooms, but the guards are so tough that not even she has been able to get past them. You can see it's true just by looking at how many guards are standing around there. Everyone inside held their weapons and stayed watchful, which was very different from the people outside. Just as the operation was about to begin, he turned to Claude and asked for one final favor. He poked her muscles and told her to use her raw strength to smash 1 or 2 buildings right in front of her. He hears the officer follow orders, and the guards in the passage listen too. Claude did a great job holding her ground, but soon a demon burst in screaming that the livestock pens had collapsed and the beasts were running wild. So the guards rushed out to help, while one stayed behind to keep watch as the new shift arrived, and the lone guard sighed sadly for whoever had to deal with the mess in that barn. He had no idea what terrible thing was about to happen to him. Now that the final guard lies on the ground, Sol just has to find the private quarters in one of the rooms ahead. He tries his luck by slowly checking every single room. He finds himself lost in a dark, gloomy place. The biggest sign that he made a terrible mistake is the wild, terrifying beast leaping at him. Vine lunged forward, shouting a demand to know why a filthy human had dared to enter her room. 3 years ago, right when Balom's greatest creation was about to wake up, the Chimera chamber doors flew open, and a girl tumbled out straight into her father's arms. As Vine drew her first breath into the world, the demon colonel stepped forward to greet his precious daughter. Still feeling dizzy, she looked at the man who claimed to be her dad. Since her birthday is so special, he made a beautiful bouquet of flowers to welcome her into the world. Her eyes sparkled with love and joy, completely unaware of the other demon scientists around her who were busy cleaning up the bodies of the Chimias that hadn't been as lucky or successful as she was. Now she was locked in a fight with a human who had barged into her room, and Sol cursed his bad luck as he was forced back into that very room. He tries to put some space between them for now, but she is zooming right at him with no chance to stop. He barely dodges the blow, taking a small scrape on his arm. The blows never stopped. He blocked them all, but he was just wasting time without making a single move forward. If he doesn't rush, he'll arrive too late to save Mello from Balom. He slips past the next strike and quickly loops around to stand behind the young challenger. He hits her back and slashes downward, catching the Chimera off guard. She dodged his next blow and stepped back several meters, realizing just how dangerous he is. She wonders how he could know her secret weakness, so he just says he's fought girls like her before. The smartest way to hit Chimias is right at their weak links. To her, it's the straight line stretching all the way across her back. He couldn't resist making fun of her scary face, but Vine was so angry he was ready to kill that awful person no matter what. It turns out she wasn't even fighting hard before. Though their actions mostly balance each other out, he is running out of time. If he tried to do too much, he'd risk the commander catching on to what he was really up to. With the Chimera charging a deadly blow, he has no choice but to gamble everything on a risky counterattack. Back in Balan's lab, a green light bathed the scientist and his subject in eerie glow. He hummed happily as he looked over every tool he was about to use. Mello was lying on the table while he sang happy birthday to him. He takes it a step further by claiming her as his own. The scalpel hovers over her neck, ready to slice, but a sudden shout from outside stops him just in time. The commotion is wild until he spots Vine at the door, having already taken charge of the mess herself. She wipes the blood away, nods her head, and declares that the intruder is gone for now. Balam admits he hates sneaky intruders, especially violent natives, and insists everyone must accept peace quickly. Right as Vine spots an unconscious girl on his operating table and wonders how she ended up there. He knows she's talking about her friend, so he tells her that the child visited still worried about what happened the day before and wants to help them. He promised that they would stay together forever, and his words echoed in her mind as he declared he would create another version of her. Because of this, she openly asks if he was trying to replace her. Her scary, angry face stops him in his tracks, but he just laughs it off and says there is no one in the world who could ever take the place of his favorite daughter. She claims she needs no companion after he says he just worried she was lonely, kicks the operating table aside, and stares at the girl on the floor to declare that her father belongs to her alone. Balam reads the sadness in his daughter's eyes and knows she needs no one else but herself. He pats her head gently while gushing about how adorable it is that her rare selfish side is finally showing. He keeps rubbing her head when a guard bursts in to say the escaped beasts are finally caught. As the colonel praised them, Vine kept his eyes fixed on them before turning to look at Mello. To everyone's shock, she pushes her friend toward the guard and orders him to take her somewhere so dark she can't even see. He's so shaken he barely catches the body, but when she repeats her command firmly, he slowly agrees to do it. To help her out, Balan smiles and tells the demon to keep up the good work before leaving. Later, he chuckled with a playful sigh at how hopelessly jealous his daughter was. Just as she was about to go, Vine shouted one last time, shyly telling him she loved him above all, and with a soft smile he said he already knew that. While the guard obeyed his orders to take Mello out to the forest, he lets out a heavy sigh when the boss hands him more work right as he thinks his day is finally over. Shivering and staring around, the demon felt his stomach rumble from a long day and couldn't imagine throwing away the food he was already holding. It looked like a trap to get him to take a bite, and just as he opened his mouth for a big chew, Claude popped up and kicked him right on the head. As the demon is forced to crash to the ground, she finally lets out a breath of relief, watching over a safe and sound Mello. All Sol had to do now was slip back out without getting caught. When night finally fell, the windows of Vine's room swung wide open. The Chimera peeked around to make sure no one was watching, then quietly took flight into the night. When she finally made it to the woods, a voice called out to her, telling her she was late. Sol stood by the trees, worn out from all the waiting she had done for him. The two of them checked and found that Mello was safe once the demon guard led her into the forest. Even though they made a deal, the human still wasn't sure if she would hold up her end. Just a few hours back, they fought until Vine lunged with her claws, but Sol held her arm tight to show her his face and remind her he protects her friend, while a memory of Mello calling someone her teacher suddenly came back to mind. Then he steps forward to save the kid Balan has kidnapped just to change him around. The chimera came to life through a special process called augmentation, and Sol asked her to help rescue the tiny creature. But why would she do that? To the chimera, humans are just pests and her father is the one thing that matters most, so she's being asked if she's ready to be swapped out for a new creation. The truth and chance of it happening slowly sank deep into her heart. Desperate for her help, he promises to reveal the hero's true power if she lets him. And now that Vine has done his part of the bargain, he is demanding to hear everything she knows about the hero's power. She told him it was a gift just for her and her dad, and Sol couldn't help but be amazed by how devoted she was. Before he speaks, he sets one condition: she must defeat him in a duel, a challenge she scoffs at even though he's just holding a small tree branch. But his pride doesn't last, for when he unleashes his power, the wind ripples through the forest. It was overflowing with power, and she couldn't stop staring at what she was seeing. Before she could even blink, he was behind her and a sudden punch sent her flying. For a split second, she wonders how he managed to move so quickly. As she steadies herself, he admits that hiding was impossible before, but now, deep in the woods, he can finally let go. She gathers her strength, curses the man, and warns him not to get too proud. Her powerful claws slashed out, but by the time she arrived, her target had already vanished. Just as if they were playing, he suddenly drops to his knee and presses it hard against her stomach. As she collapsed from the pain, he mocked her for thinking the fight was easy. This manages to push her buttons, making her recklessly charge forward to find out who he really is. He expertly sidesteps the child's attacks, but gives a blank, dismissive shrug to the question. Vine struck again and again, but her blows never touched him. Instead, he snatched her arm, tossed her off balance, and sent her crashing onto the cold, hard ground. She pushed herself up, her jaw tight with pain, but her heart still wanted to keep fighting. Sol's branch suddenly popped up right in front of her eye, looking like a man ready to fight with a real weapon. Power surged through him as he asked if she'd had enough. It felt like a freezing monster was glaring at her, teeth bared and ready to strike at any moment. Fear surged through her veins as the match ended instantly, leaving her rooted to the spot in rage, screaming that she couldn't even beat a simple human. It is not something someone who must be stronger than everyone else can accept. Sol watched in silence as tears streamed down her face until she finally stopped crying. But with only one question swirling in his head, he asks her how she truly felt about Mel. Vine is stunned by the question and bluntly replies that she doesn't care about the girl who constantly follows her and claims to be her friend. She forces herself to eat nasty things, and even though she's human, she tries to save a demon from her own kind. She squeezes herself between Balam and herself, clutching every precious memory of Mello, while Vine calls her nothing more than annoying. Who finally understands what's happening as she reacts and answers. He spins around with a hot attitude, calling her a brat even though she's got serious skills. In the end, a brat is just a kid who throws a fit because they don't know what they're feeling inside. She argues that she was her father's special creation, but he shuts her down by asking how a special one could lose to a simple human. So after stinging her pride again, he tells her to keep her embarrassing day to herself until she can beat him, or else she'll make her father disappointed. He puts their deal on hold for now and asks her to figure out why Mello makes her so angry. She grumbles that calling it homework is unfair. But that's completely normal since he's grown up, and just like that, the man vanishes, leaving the confused demon wondering how she really feels about her friend. Sol doubted his daughter's feelings were mutual, but even if they weren't, keeping the chimera quiet was the most important thing. The real danger was her power, which he saw right away. Just meeting him once was enough for him to realize that Balloom had used Dion's dead body as the heart of the chimera. Mello is back in her bed, sleeping soundly while Sol and Claude watch over her. Claude walks away, leaving Sol to stay with the girl he raised like his own daughter. The man is stressed that Balan won't be long in figuring out Mello's secret power. He considers leaving, yet he can't stand the thought of it sending Mello back to the streets with no place to call home. He remembers every time they did this and knows they are stuck in a loop, doomed to do it forever. He gently pats the little girl's head as she sleeps, wondering if he has been doing a good job raising her. Gabu, lying right next to Mello, glances at Sol and notices how serious his face looks. The next morning, Mello slips out of her room the moment she wakes up. She is in high spirits as she watches Claude set the table for their breakfast. Sol steps up to say hello to the little girl, but Mello, remembering how angry she was with him before, just gets annoyed that he is even there. Sol tells her that she needs to head out to the backyard after breakfast. Claude warns the man not to push a recovering Mello, but the man coldly replies that it doesn't concern her, and soon after, Mello walks into the backyard where Sol is waiting with two wooden swords. He hands one to Mello and tells the bewildered kid she must use it to block him. At him suddenly, a soul smacks her on the head, making the little girl furious, but he reminds her that he warned her to use her power to block it. A soul points his wooden sword at her and says he must train her if she wants to survive. He admits he was wrong to tell her never to use her power since she never learned how to control it. So as a result, she would always go wild with it, but he promised to teach her how to control her power while showing his own by wrapping his body in purple energy. He channels all his power into his blade and asks Mello to do the same with hers. Mello shuts her eyes tightly to gather her strength before swinging her wooden sword. She releases her golden power, but it cracks her sword into shards. Ibao's soul strikes her head once more and orders her to stop making so much noise. The little girl keeps trying it over and over, only to get bonked on the head again and again. Mello gets so mad she pours all her power and anger right back onto her master. She rushes at Soul to strike him, but Soul warns that even her great power leaves her vulnerable if she cannot control it. He easily slips away from her flying kick and elbows her back so hard she crashes through the wooden structure. Soul urges her to treat the situation with seriousness, while an annoyed but unharmed Mello steps out of the wooden structure as she confesses to her master that she simply cannot control her power. While it's dark, Balloon is quietly watching the glass of chemicals in his hand. Inside the glass bottle, a single strand of hair waits until the bottle shatters and spills its chemicals everywhere. Balam remembers taking a strand of hair from Mello and grins like a madman just thinking about who that person really is. Claude is munching on lunch in the Demon Army HQ cafeteria, blending right in with the other demons. She thinks about Mello and worries he's okay, but then stops herself from letting those thoughts take over. She explains that she belongs to the Demon Army and is only staying at the house to learn how strong souls truly are. Then Balloon shows up in front of her looking as happy as ever. Claude feels totally creeped out when the demon colonel grabs her arm. Balloon gently asks her to do just one small thing for him. Clay doesn't know that Balam has just marked her shoulder with a crest. Far away in Soul's backyard, Mello stands ready with his sword, focusing his mind on his stance. She channels her golden energy into her blade. She is so relieved she finally made it, but then Soul suddenly darts at her, knocks her block with a mighty blow, and sends her flying backward. Himmel jumps up, tears streaming down her face, and wails about how unkind her master has been. Himmel tells her that fighting to survive means she must never let her guard down because if anyone attacks her they will never care about her feelings, which baffles the little girl and makes her wonder who is really after her. Himmel tells her that even though she doesn't care for her parents, they are still the ones who gave her her power. He tells her that their power is meant to help people and battle the forces of evil. He warns her that her power draws in trouble whether she wants it to or not, so her only hope is to learn to wield it well enough to keep herself safe. He tells her he only wants her to choose for herself what to do with her power once she knows how to use it. Mello tries to calm her power but can't make it stop, so she throws a fit about how hard it is to control. Soul feels the girl has done well in such a short time, but he still fears Balan might strike at any moment. Mia wonders if her power came from her father, so she asks where Soul got his power from. Soul remembers every time his power turned him into a beast and hesitates to answer her. Then Claude shows up and invites Mello to join her. Just as Mello charges toward her, Soul quickly pulls Claude's hand. He warns Claude that if she tries to take Mello, he won't hold back. Claude lunges at Soul with her sword, and he barely manages to dodge in time. Soul suddenly feels like she's a puppet dancing to Balan's spell. Klaus warns Soul that she won't hold back any mercy. In the moment, Soul steps in front of Mello and tells her to stay back. Spots the mark on Claude's shoulder and instantly knows he has cast a spell on her. After fighting for so long, Claude is knocked out and lies on the ground covered in bruises. Soul looks back on the fight and can't believe how insanely strong Claude turned out to be. He finally understands that Balloon broke every safety limit on Claude, causing her body to take a massive hit inside. Her steady control makes Soul think back to the mindless Chimias he once fought. He tells the little girl to bring all the bandages, water and medicine from the workshop, and she does exactly as he asks.